Scene script. Ponder this. Who holds the climatic hot potato of responsibility? As we delve into the ethical layers of climate change, we find ourselves faced with the shadows of historical emissions and their implications on our present-day world. Let's take a trip down the timeline of industrial development. Developed countries, those in North America and Europe, for instance, embarked on their industrial journey in the 18th century. This early onset of industrialization led to them contributing a larger chunk of greenhouse gas emissions, long before many other nations joined the industrial bandwagon. Why does this history lesson matter? Because these long-standing emissions have had ample time to stir the climate pot, influencing our current climate system and leading to the impacts we're witnessing today, from extreme weather events to the relentless rise in sea levels. It's much like a climatic debt that developed nations have accrued over centuries. Their prosperity has been built on a foundation of greenhouse gas emissions, a foundation that has laid the groundwork for our current climate crisis. On the other side of the spectrum, developing countries have contributed a mere fraction to these historical emissions. Many are only now stepping onto the industrial stage, their greenhouse gas emissions just beginning to climb, yet they often bear the brunt of climate change effects, despite their minimal contribution to the problem. This presents a major ethical dilemma. Should developing countries, eager to improve the living standards of their populations, suppress their development because the global emissions quota has been largely consumed by developed nations? Ethics suggest that those who have stirred the climate pot more should be the ones to turn off the stove. This is where principles such as the polluter pays and common but differentiated responsibilities come into the picture. These principles propose that while all nations should join hands to combat climate change, developed countries should lead the charge by slashing emissions significantly and supporting poorer nations in adapting to climate impacts and transitioning to green technologies. So when we discuss the responsibility for climate change, we're not just talking about who's emitting more now, we're talking about who has been emitting more over the long haul, and how those historical actions shape our present and future responsibilities. This understanding is pivotal in international negotiations on climate policies. Fairness, equity, and justice aren't just words thrown around in these discussions. They're the backbone of reaching global agreements. In sum, the issue of climate change responsibility is not black and white. It's a complex tapestry woven with threads of historical emissions, ethical considerations, and the stark realities of developing nations. It's not just about who's to blame, but about who's willing to step up and take action. The responsibility lies in our hands, but it's the weight of our historical actions that will determine how we carry it forward.